Republican Senator Rand Paul says he will vote to block President Trump's national emergency declaration. Paul says he cannot give the president extra constitutional powers. And that means there are enough votes in the Senate to send the disapproval to the president's desk. President Trump has vowed to veto that. Joining us now is Matt Schlapp. He's the chairman of CPAC and the former political director for President George W. Bush. Matt, great to see you.
Good to see you, Allison.
Let me read to you what Senator Rand Paul wrote in a Fox News op-ed about his reasoning. He says, I would literally lose my political soul if I decided to treat President Trump differently than President Obama. Every single Republican I know decried President Obama's use of executive power to legislate. We were right then. But the only way to be an honest office holder is to stand up for the same principles, no matter who is in power. What do you think of his rationale?
I'm a great admirer of Rand Paul. I think there's the legal question as to whether or not Donald Trump has the legal right to declare this emergency, which I think is an open and shut case. But then individual senators have to decide whether that law that Congress passed and the Supreme Court upheld, whether or not that law is something they want to support, specifically in this case. So he's got the right to make that call. It'll have no impact on what happens with the emergency because, of course, Donald Trump will veto.
Yeah, I mean, but what Senator Paul is talking about is the hypocrisy of it. I mean, he's saying that, as you know, Matt, I mean, you guys couldn't stand it when President Obama went around Congress and when he used some sort of executive order. You couldn't stand it. And so why now are you okay with it?
Because in this specific case, Allison, when it comes to our immigration laws that Barack Obama decided to not enforce, a president doesn't have the right to pick and choose the laws that he enforces. You have to enforce the laws that are on the book. What's happening here in this specific case is the Constitution gives the president the not just the authority, but the responsibility of securing our borders. Yeah. And what Congress has done in its own profligate spending has already appropriated millions and billions of dollars in different accounts that can be used to secure the southern border. Excuse me. So that's the difference here, is that the funding follows the president's clear, delineated responsibilities in our law, and that's why he will win in court. Now, Rand Paul can say it'd be better if we had a legislative solution. I would agree it would be better, but the Democrats have decided that they will give the president nothing when it comes to this.
Couple things. You know that President Obama had more deportations than any previous president in recent memory. So the fact that you say he did nothing to enforce the law, he deported tons of people, number one. Number two, you know that this is precedent breaking. It's precedent breaking. So the fact that the president can declare an emergency declaration, yes, but no president has ever been denied by Congress the money and then done an end run around Congress. That is what is making this situation so different.
Yeah, I think this is right. First of all, you're right about President George W. Bush and Obama, that they stepped up the level of deportations. Barack Obama was even called the deporter-in-chief by some on the left. The difference now is that because we changed our laws in 2006 and we've had other judges from the Ninth Circuit and other places intervene, it's not the numbers of people who are coming here illegally. Sometimes those lines are pretty flat. Sometimes they come down. It's the type of people who are coming here. There are people from countries who get an automatic into the country. The number of children and young women being trafficked is going through the roof. If you talk to Doctors Without Borders, if you get in and look at the granularity of the types of people who are coming to our country, we have very little ability to ever deport them. And that is the problem. And that's why we've had people die at the border. And that's why we've had this trauma of family separation.
Yeah.
There really is a crisis. And the difference here between past presidents on these emergency powers and Donald Trump is that when it comes to immigration, most presidents are fairly careful because it's an explosive topic.
Yeah.
When it comes to Donald Trump, he said, look, we're never going to solve this problem until we secure the border. And I agree with him.
Yeah, but just to be clear, I mean, the numbers of people who are seeking asylum, which is what you're talking about, women and children, have not changed since 2017. So he didn't declare this in 2017. So here's the thing, Matt. It's hard to believe that it's a national emergency when the president declared it and then went golfing the next day and the day after.
So, Allison, what you basically said is it could only have been an emergency if he had declared it when he first became president.
I'm saying, why didn't he declare it? Why didn't he declare it that year when there were people seeking asylum then?
because the first reason is because I think he, as you believe it or not, it's a pretty tough job. And he was an outsider, never spent a day in government. I think he is learning about what the law tells him he can and can't do, number one. Number two, he has tried to work with Congress, including a Republican Congress.
And it didn't work.
Republican Congress that wasn't that willing to actually secure the border.
Right. They weren't willing to give him the money that he wanted.
Well,
That's
they
different,
actually did
Matt.
give him the money. They just gave it to him in these other accounts, which they have finally figured out they can use to build the wall. And I think the Supreme Court will uphold this. And I think these extra 200 miles of border protection is going to get built.
Now's a good time to segue to BS. So let's talk about what happened at CPAC.
Did you just say BS?
I said BS. I did not say the full term as the president did. Here's the president as just a part of his 2-hour speech at CPAC. Listen to this.
Unfortunately, you put the wrong people in a couple of positions, and they leave people for a long time that shouldn't be there. And all of a sudden, they're trying to take you out with bullshit, okay? Robert Mueller never received a vote, and neither did the person that appointed him.
Did you expect him to speak for 2 hours?
I think it was 2 hours and 20 minutes. And
How much time did you allot for it?
I don't even know, because maybe 30, 40 minutes. But when I talked to him afterwards, I think he could have gone another hour, Allison. He was still amped up. We had a long conversation. And, look, I think the thing about CPAC, which is probably hard for people who have never gone, is this is not so much a speech that the president gave. It was almost a conversation as he was talking to people in the audience throughout it. It was an extraordinary event.
Well, I mean, people also felt that you used the term amped up. We've heard the term, sort of unhinged. I mean, people felt that he was giving his own kind of self-preservation defense there, just that it had gotten to him, that the week after Michael Cohen had gotten to him, and he felt the need for 2 hours to kind of justify where he was.
Well, I do think there's a little bit of political therapy that goes on between Donald Trump and the CPAC audience. I mean, there is, it wasn't always in this spot, and it's come to the point where the people who come to CPAC are really heartened and vindicated by the things President Trump is doing. There's genuine affection for him. I think he feels the same way, and I think it's a good thing. Look, I'm sure there are Democratic politicians that have their places where they go, where there's great affection in the audience, and I think the longer he spoke, the more it was telling that that this relationship is there, and the crowd loved it. And by the way, it's a huge international crowd too. So like, this is an important moment where for many ways, I think the 2020 themes, 20 presidential themes, have emerged.
There you go, Matt Schlapp. Thank